My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31 years old. If you asked anyone who knew me casually, they'd probably describe me the same way they describe a well-built house. Solid, practical, nothing flashy, but dependable. The kind of woman you assume has her life figured out, not because it's glamorous, but because it doesn't wobble. I work as a civil engineer. Bridges, specifically. I design the parts no one notices unless they fail. Load calculations, stress points, redundancies, the unsexy work that keeps everything standing when pressure hits. It suits me. I make just under 6 figures a year. I own a townhouse with neutral paint and a small, aggressively tidy backyard. I drive a sensible sedan that's paid off. I have a retirement account I actually understand and a spreadsheet that tracks my expenses down to the coffee creamer I prefer. I am not spontaneous. I am not chaotic. I am not the woman who forgets her wallet or misses deadlines or makes dramatic exits. I show up, on time, every time. And until recently, I thought that was something to be proud of. I met Ryan 4 years ago at a mutual friend's housewarming party. He was charming, in a low-effort way. Tall, confident, the kind of man who never seemed rushed, even when he arrived late. He made jokes easily. People gravitated toward him without realizing why. He noticed me because I wasn't trying to be noticed. "You're different," he told me on our third date, like it was a compliment. Different from the women who were loud, impulsive, unpredictable. Different from the women who had hurt him before. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I took it as proof that I was safe territory. Over time, that became our unspoken dynamic. Ryan brought the excitement. I brought the stability. He talked about his ideas. I made plans. He followed feelings. I followed through. When he forgot to pay the bill, I handled it. When his job situation got messy, my savings bridged the gap. When his mood swung, I stayed steady. I told myself that relationships were about balance, that not every love story needed fireworks, that maybe this calm, grown-up partnership was what lasting love actually looked like. We got engaged 11 months ago. The proposal wasn't dramatic. No crowd, no flash, just a quiet dinner at home, candles I bought, food I cooked, and a ring he admitted he'd been stressing over for weeks because he didn't want to mess it up. When he knelt, he looked relieved before he looked happy. I noticed. I told myself it didn't matter. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Everything was booked. Venue, caterer, photographer, DJ, invitations sent, honeymoon paid for. My calendar was a minefield of color-coded reminders and final payments. We were in the last details phase, the phase everyone warns you about, where stress spikes and tempers get short. Ryan's friends joked that he was lucky to have me keeping everything on track. He didn't argue. Last Saturday, he had his groomsmen over for what he called a low-key hang. Suits hanging in garment bags. Beer on the counter, music playing just loud enough to sound like a good time. I was supposed to be at my sister's place across town helping her assemble a bookshelf she swore didn't come with instructions. I left in a hurry, mentally running through my checklist for the week ahead. Halfway there, I realized I'd forgotten my wallet. I almost kept going. Almost. But habits like mine don't allow loose ends. I turned around. I parked on the street instead of pulling into the garage, figuring I'd be in and out. I came through the front door quietly, not sneaking, just not announcing myself. I didn't want to interrupt their thing. That's when I heard them. Not laughter at first, just conversation. Casual, comfortable, the sound of men killing time. I recognized Ryan's voice immediately. "So," one of his friends asked, "are you actually excited for the wedding?" There was a pause. A small one, but noticeable. "It'll be good," Ryan said. "Yeah, it'll be good." Someone laughed. "That's not exactly a yes." Another voice, his best friend, I think. "Man, you sound like you're talking about a work meeting." Ryan chuckled, the way he always did when he thought he was being misunderstood. "Look," he said, and something in his tone shifted. Lower, more honest. "I'm not marrying Claire because she gives me butterflies or anything." My name landed in the air like a dropped plate. "I'm marrying her because she's safe," he continued. "She's stable. She's not going to blow up my life. She won't cheat, won't leave, won't do anything unpredictable." Silence. Then someone snorted. "That's one way to put it." Ryan went on, warming to his point. "The exciting women," he said, "they're fun until they ruin you. Claire won't ruin me. She's just there. Solid. Reliable. Like," he hesitated, searching for the word. "Like furniture?" someone supplied. "Laughter. Actual laughter." "Yeah," Ryan said, amused. "Exactly. Comfortable furniture. High quality. You don't think about it much, but your life would be harder without it. More laughter. I stood in my own entryway in the house I paid for. Listening to the man I was about to marry reduced me to an object. Not even a decorative one. Something functional. Something chosen because it wouldn't move. Something inside me went very, very quiet. No anger, no tears, just a sudden, terrifying clarity. I stepped forward. The living room came into view. Suits, beer bottles, familiar faces. Every conversation died at once. Ryan turned, his face drained of color. "Claire," he said, "you're back early." I looked at him, really looked, at the man who had just described me as a couch. I smiled. "Let's add some excitement," I said. The silence after my words was immediate and absolute. It wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no shouting, just the sound of a playlist still running somewhere in the background and the faint clink of a beer bottle being set down too carefully. Ryan stared at me like his brain was buffering. One of his friends cleared his throat. Another suddenly found the floor fascinating. Someone else reached for their phone and then thought better of it. "Claire," Ryan said slowly, like volume might solve this. "How much did you hear?" I tilted my head, considering. "Enough," I said. "But if you're asking whether I heard the part where you compared me to furniture, yes, that too." His mouth opened, closed. He glanced at his friends, searching for backup that didn't come. "That's not," he started. "It wasn't meant like that." "Interesting," I replied. My voice sounded steady, almost detached, like I was reviewing a structural failure after the fact. "Because you meant it loudly, clearly, with an audience." One of the groomsmen laughed nervously. "Hey man, maybe we should—" "No," I said, cutting in, still looking at Ryan. "Stay. I don't want anyone confused about what's happening." Ryan took a step toward me. "Babe, this was just guy talk. You know how people exaggerate when they're stressed." I nodded. "You're stressed about the wedding?" "Yes." "So under stress, you tell your friends you're marrying me because I'm safe, not because you want me." "That's not what I said." I raised an eyebrow. Ryan swallowed. "Okay, that's technically what I said, but you're focusing on the wrong part." "Oh?" I asked. "Which part should I focus on? The part where you said I don't give you butterflies? Or the part where you said there's nothing to break with me?" One of his friends winced. Ryan rubbed his face. "Claire, you're taking this way too literally." I laughed. Once. Short and sharp. It surprised even me. "You compared me to a couch." "That was a joke." "No one laughed like it was a joke," I said. "They laughed like it was true." Silence again. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You're really going to do this right now? In front of everyone?" "You already did," I said. "I'm just responding." He exhaled hard. "Look, you know I love you. This wedding, this is my future. Our future." I studied him. The way he stood there, hands slightly raised like he was negotiating a misunderstanding instead of facing a consequence. "I don't think you understand what love is," I said quietly. That finally got a reaction. Ryan frowned. "That's unfair." "Is it?" I asked. "Because someone who loves me doesn't describe me like a risk-free investment. They don't talk about me like I'm something they picked because everything else scared them." He shook his head. "You're twisting this." "Then untwist it," I said. "Explain it to me. Explain how I'm only marrying her because she's safe is supposed to make me feel chosen." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Behind him, one of the groomsmen shifted uncomfortably. Another stared at his beer, like it might offer guidance. Ryan tried again. "I meant that you make me feel secure, that I trust you, that I know you won't hurt me." "And that's the best thing you can say about marrying me?" His silence answered. Something settled in my chest then, heavy, final. I nodded to myself. "The wedding is off," I said. The words landed harder than I expected. Ryan blinked. "What?" "We're done," I clarified. "There's no wedding." Someone let out a quiet, involuntary, "Oh shit." "You can't be serious," Ryan said, his voice rising. "The wedding is in 3 weeks." "I'm aware." "Everything is booked, paid for." "I know." "You're overreacting," he said sharply now. "People say stupid things when they're stressed. You don't just throw away 4 years over one conversation." I met his eyes. "I didn't. You did. I just happened to overhear it." He scoffed. "So what? You're just going to walk away? Cancel everything? Humiliate me?" I smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in it. "I'm not humiliating you," I said. "I'm removing myself from a role I didn't agree to." "What role?" "The safe option," I replied. "The one you settle for while wishing you were somewhere else." Ryan took a step back like I'd hit him. "This is insane," he muttered. "You're blowing up your own life." I shrugged. "Better now than after paperwork." One of his friends finally spoke up. Man, maybe we should give you guys some space." "Yes," I said, "please." They didn't need to be told twice. Jackets were grabbed, beer bottles abandoned, shoes pulled on in a hurry. Within minutes, the house was quiet again. Just me and Ryan. He stood in the middle of the living room, hands on his hips, staring at me like I'd changed languages. "You don't mean this," he said. "I do. You'll regret it." "I already regret staying as long as I did," I replied. His face hardened. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "you start figuring out where you're going to live." His eyes widened. "What?" "This is my house," I reminded him. "You'll need to move out by the end of the week." "That's not fair." "Neither is being compared to furniture," I said. He stared at me, stunned. I turned toward the stairs. "I forgot why I came back," I added. "I'm grabbing my wallet. When I come down, I'd like you to be gone, or at least quiet." I walked upstairs before he could respond. Behind me, the house felt different. Lighter. Like something rotten had finally been exposed to air. I found my wallet on the nightstand, exactly where I'd left it. I picked it up, took one last look around the bedroom we'd shared, and realized something that should have terrified me. I felt nothing. When I came back downstairs, Ryan was still standing in the living room. He hadn't moved. It was almost impressive, like if he stayed perfectly still long enough, reality might reverse itself and put everything back where it belonged. The suits still hung along the wall. The half-empty beers still sat on the counter. The playlist had switched to something upbeat and wildly inappropriate, like the house itself hadn't gotten the memo. "You didn't have to kick everyone out," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "They left because they understood what just happened." He shook his head. "You're acting like I cheated on you." "I wish you had," I said calmly. "That would have been easier." His brow furrowed. "What does that even mean?" "It means infidelity has a shape," I said. "People understand it. This?" I gestured vaguely between us. "This is harder to explain. You didn't sleep with someone else. You just told a room full of people you don't actually want me." "That's not what I said." "You said you're marrying me because I'm safe," I repeated. "Not because you desire me. Not because you're excited about me, because I won't ruin your life." "That's a good thing," he insisted. "Why are you twisting it into something ugly?" "Because you didn't say it like admiration," I replied. "You said it like relief." He exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." I laughed again. This time it came out tired. "I design bridges, Ryan," I said. "I spend my days calculating how much weight something can carry before it collapses. Do you know what happens when one side takes all the load?" He frowned. "What?" "It fails," I said. "Quietly at first, then all at once." He stared at me like I'd just started speaking another language. "You're really going to cancel the wedding," he said slowly. "Yes." "You're going to eat the deposits?" "Yes." "The honeymoon?" "I'll try to get partial credit," I said. "If not, that's fine too." His voice sharpened. "Do you have any idea how much money that is?" $8,200, I said without hesitation. He blinked. "You already calculated it?" "I like to know the cost of things before I decide they're worth it." He scoffed. "And this is worth it to you?" "Yes." "That's insane." "No," I corrected. "Staying would be insane." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "So you're just done. No conversation, no counseling, no trying to work through it." I watched him circle the coffee table, agitated. "You don't go to counseling to convince someone to want you," I said. "You go to fix misunderstandings. This isn't a misunderstanding." "You're throwing away 4 years over one sentence." "One sentence that revealed 4 years of truth," I replied. He stopped pacing. "I love you." I met his eyes. "You love what I provide." "That's not fair." "It's accurate." His jaw clenched. "You don't get to decide how I feel." "I don't have to," I said. "You already told me." For a moment, he looked like he might argue again. Then something shifted. His shoulders dropped. His voice softened. "Claire," he said quietly, "you're the best thing that ever happened to me." I studied his face. The sincerity. The fear creeping in around the edges. "Then why did you talk about me like I wasn't even in the room?" I asked. He didn't answer. I nodded. "I'll call the vendors tomorrow," I said. "You should call your family tonight." "For what?" "To explain why the wedding's off," I replied. "Tell them whatever helps you sleep, that I overreacted, that I got scared, that I misunderstood." He stared at me. "You don't care what they think?" "I care what I know," I said. "And I know someone who loves me doesn't describe me like an insurance policy." He scoffed bitterly. "So you're perfect now?" "No," I said. "I'm done." He looked around the house I owned, the life he'd been folding himself into without ever fully committing. "You'll regret this," he said again, quieter now. "Maybe," I replied, "but I won't regret staying somewhere I'm not wanted." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To my sister's," I said. "I'll be back tomorrow. I expect you to start packing." "That's cold." I paused at the door. No, I said. This is clarity. You just mistake it for cold because it doesn't beg. I walked out before he could respond. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Not a slam. Just the sound of something ending exactly when it should have. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was spiraling or replaying the conversation on a loop. I'd already archived it in my head, filed under structural failures, cause identified. What kept me awake was the unfamiliar quiet inside me, the absence of doubt, the eerie calm that follows a decision you didn't realize you'd been preparing for years to make. By morning, it was gone. The calm, I mean. What replaced it was logistics. I made coffee at my sister's kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started dialing. First, the venue. I already knew the answer before the coordinator even finished her condolences. Non-refundable. The deposit was gone. I thanked her anyway, because politeness had always been my reflex, even when my life was actively detonating. Then the caterer. Same story. Florist. DJ photographer. Each call shaved off another piece of the future I'd planned, methodically dismantled like scaffolding after a project was scrapped. By noon, I had the total. $8,200. I wrote it down in my spreadsheet because that's how my brain worked. Numbers made things tangible, manageable. If I could quantify the damage, I could move on. My sister watched me from across the table, arms crossed. You okay? She asked carefully. I will be, I said. She didn't push. She knew me well enough to understand that when I got quiet like this, it meant the decision had already calcified. I went home that afternoon. Ryan's car was still in the driveway. Inside, the house smelled faintly of beer and something sharper, panic maybe. He was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at his phone like it might deliver a miracle. You're back, he said. Yes. He stood. We need to talk. We already did. No, he insisted. We need to really talk. I set my bag down and leaned against the counter. This isn't a negotiation. You don't just cancel a wedding without trying to fix it. I do, I said, if the thing that's broken is the foundation. He frowned. You're being dramatic again. I smiled faintly. That's interesting, because you called me boring last night. That's not... Ryan, I interrupted. I'm not here to debate semantics. I'm here to tell you what's happening. He crossed his arms. Which is? You're moving out, I said. By the end of the week. His eyes widened. You can't just kick me out. This is my house, I said evenly. I can. That's heartless. No, I replied. Heartless was calling me furniture. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, like the version of me who absorbed everything quietly had finally been replaced by something less convenient. My dad is coming tonight, he said after a moment, to help me pack. That's fine. He hesitated. He wants to talk to you. I don't. That evening, his father arrived in a pickup truck. Polite, uncomfortable. The kind of man who shook hands firmly and avoided eye contact when things went wrong. He extended his hand. I looked at it, then at him. No disrespect, I said, but I'm not in the mood. He nodded slowly, hand dropping back to his side. Understood. They packed in silence. Boxes, bags, half a life, suddenly portable. Ryan tried to speak to me twice. Both times I went upstairs. When they were almost done, he stood at the bottom of the stairs and waited. This is really it, he said. You're really doing this. You already did this, I replied from the landing. I'm just responding. I love you, he said again, desperation leaking into his voice now. I looked down at him. You love what I provide, I said. That's not the same thing. His face crumpled. His father put a hand on his shoulder and guided him out. The door closed. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel grief either. I felt empty. And that scared me more than anything else. The quiet didn't last. It never does. It was barely 8:30 the next morning when my phone rang. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the empty space where Ryan's coffee mug used to sit, trying to decide if I wanted eggs or just more caffeine. The caller ID told me everything I needed to know. His mother. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? She didn't bother with greetings. You need to fix this. I closed my eyes. I'm not sure what you think is broken, I said carefully, but I didn't cause it. My son, she stopped herself, corrected course. Ryan has been devastated. He hasn't slept. He hasn't eaten. He's beside himself. I pictured him pacing the living room, phone glued to his hand, rehearsing explanations that made him sound misunderstood instead of accountable. I'm sorry he's upset, I said, but that doesn't change anything. You're throwing away a perfectly good relationship over one comment, she snapped. That's not how adults behave. I leaned against the counter. Ma'am, your son told his friends he's only marrying me because I'm safe and compared me to furniture. There was a pause. That's just how men talk, she said dismissively. It doesn't mean anything. I smiled to myself. If I told my friends I was marrying your son because he was boring but reliable, I said, would that be okay? Silence. Longer this time. That's different, she finally said. Is it? I asked. Or does it only sound acceptable when I'm the one being diminished? She didn't answer. I'm not fixing this, I said. Have a nice day. I hung up before she could regroup. The next call came an hour later. Ryan's younger sister. She was 26, deeply invested in wellness podcasts, and the belief that every conflict could be solved if everyone just did the emotional work. I think your energy is really closed off right now, she said after a cursory hello. You're holding on to resentment, and that's blocking forgiveness. I'm holding on to self-respect, I replied. Easy mistake to make. She sighed. Ryan was just expressing his fears. Men process stress differently. So do bridges, I said. But when something cracks under pressure, you don't blame the weight. You reinforce or you rebuild. You're being condescending. No, I said calmly. I'm being done. She tried a different angle. Relationships take compromise. No one gets everything they want. The bar is actually very low, I said, wanting to marry me. She went quiet. Maybe you're not as evolved as you think, she said eventually. Then Ryan is free to find someone who meets his spiritual standards, I replied. Good luck. Click. By Tuesday afternoon, I'd stopped answering numbers I didn't recognize. That's when the texts started. Friends, acquaintances, people who hadn't spoken to me in months but suddenly felt qualified to weigh in on my life choices. You're being harsh. He didn't mean it like that. Everyone vents. Marriage is about security. Then came the long one. From Mark, Ryan's best friend, the man who had laughed the loudest. It was paragraphs, apologies wrapped in justifications, concern dressed up as scolding. He wrote about stress, about context, about how safe was actually a compliment, about how most women would kill to hear that from their partner, about how I was throwing away something amazing because I couldn't handle not being someone's fantasy. I read it twice. Then I took a screenshot. I didn't respond. Thursday evening, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Mark. It was Marcus, one of Ryan's friends, not one of the loud ones, the kind who usually stayed quiet in group settings. I stared at the name for a long moment before answering. Hey, I said. Hey, he replied. His voice sounded careful. I hope this isn't crossing a line. It's been a week full of lines, I said. Go ahead. There was a pause, then, I overheard them too. My grip tightened on the phone. Not Saturday, Marcus continued. A few weeks ago. Different night. Same kind of conversation. My stomach dropped. Ryan was saying worse things, he said, about how he wished he'd dated around more before settling, about how his ex was the one that got away, but wasn't stable enough. My chest felt tight now. He talked about the wedding like a transaction, Marcus said quietly, not a marriage. I closed my eyes. I didn't say anything because I didn't think it was my place, he added. But after Saturday, and after hearing how some of the guys were defending him, I realized they all think this is normal. It's not, I said. No, he agreed. It really isn't. There was a pause. I'm sorry you had to find out like this, Marcus said. Thank you for telling me, I replied. When I hung up, something inside me loosened. Not healed, but validated. Somewhere in the house, my phone buzzed again. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Ryan didn't stop calling. At first, it was almost polite. Voicemails left with careful spacing between them, like he was trying to appear reasonable even to a machine. Claire, hey, it's me. I think we should talk face to face. This got out of hand really fast. An hour later, I know you're upset. I get that. But 4 years doesn't disappear because of one stupid conversation. By the end of the day, the tone shifted. This is insane, he said in the third message. You're making permanent decisions based on something you overheard out of context. Out of context. That phrase became his shield. Every time he used it, I pictured the living room, the laughter, the ease with which he'd said my name like I wasn't a person, but a category. I didn't respond. Day 2. The calls came earlier. Please call me, he said. I need to explain. Then, my parents are asking questions. Your parents are asking questions. Everyone already took time off for the wedding. By the evening, you're embarrassing me. That one landed differently. Not because it hurt, but because it clarified something I hadn't fully articulated yet. This wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the story. The respectable fiancé, the stable future, the woman who made him look settled and safe. Wednesday morning, I woke up to a text instead of a voicemail. I chose you. I stared at it for a long time. The word chose sat there like it was supposed to mean something generous, like it was a gift I should be grateful for instead of an admission. I typed back once, deleted it. Typed again. Finally, I sent, "You chose furniture. Furniture doesn't text back." Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? More than I expected. By midweek, the narrative had shifted. I started hearing it secondhand. Mutual friends asking my sister if I was okay. Coworkers cautiously mentioning they were sorry things didn't work out. The phrasing was telling. Didn't work out. As if this had been mutual, as if we'd drifted apart instead of detonated on impact. Then came the message that confirmed it. From a woman I barely knew, Ryan's cousin's wife. It was long, thoughtful, sanctimonious. She wrote about forgiveness, about how no one is perfect, about how relationships require grace, about how I was holding Ryan to an impossible standard that no woman could meet. I replied with one sentence. The standard is wanting to marry me. She didn't respond. The financial part followed quickly. A formal-looking letter arrived in the mail on Friday. Not from a lawyer, but written like one. It was from Ryan's father. He wanted reimbursement, hotel room blocks, dress alterations, the bachelor party deposit, the rehearsal dinner, a total of $1,300. I read it once, then again. Then I wrote back a single line. Your son ended this relationship by expressing that he was settling for me, his choices, his consequences. I never heard back. Saturday would have been the start of our final countdown. Instead, I spent it returning rental items and canceling appointments. The florist sounded genuinely sad. The DJ sounded relieved. That night, I ordered Thai food and ate it on the couch alone. The same couch Ryan once joked about upgrading once things were more exciting. I almost laughed. 6 days later, it happened. I was at the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, trying to decide between two kinds of granola I didn't actually care about. And then, Claire? I looked up. Ryan stood there with a shopping cart, frozen like he'd walked into a ghost. We stared at each other for a beat too long. Hey, he said. Hey. Neither of us moved. Weird place to run into you, he added, attempting a smile. Statistically inevitable, I replied. He swallowed. Can we talk? We are talking. No, he said. I mean, really talk. Somewhere private. I should have said no. I knew that. But something in his voice, uncertain, stripped of performance, made me hesitate. There's a coffee shop, he said, nodding toward the front of the store. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That decision would cost me exactly 1 cup of coffee and the last illusion he had left. We sat in a corner booth, steam rising between us. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For what? I asked. For hurting you. That's vague, I said. Try again. He frowned. For what I said. What part? The furniture thing. And, I pressed. He hesitated. I waited. What about the part where you said I don't inspire any real feelings in you? I asked quietly. What about saying there's nothing to break because I'm so boring I can't even cause heartbreak? I didn't say it like that. You implied it, I said. And you let them laugh. He stared into his coffee. I was venting, he said finally. The wedding was overwhelming. I was stressed. So when you're stressed, I said, you degrade the person you're about to marry. That's not fair. Neither is overhearing it. He rubbed his face. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Then how did you mean it? I asked. Explain it to me. I've been waiting weeks. He looked up, eyes glassy. I just meant that you're stable, he said. That I can count on you. That you won't hurt me like my ex did. And the exciting part? He exhaled slowly. Sometimes I miss the butterflies. The uncertainty. The rush. There it was. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, he added quickly. Yes, it does, I said. He stared at me. You don't love me, I continued. You love the life I provide. Security, stability, comfort. If you loved me, being with me would feel exciting to you. You wouldn't miss it. That's not fair, he whispered. Life isn't fair, I said. Neither is finding out you're a backup plan. He wiped at his eyes. So that's it? It was over the moment you said those words, I replied. I just made it official. What am I supposed to do now? He asked. The wedding was my dream. This was supposed to be my year. And there it was. My dream. My year. Not our future. That's for you to figure out, I said. I stood, left my coffee untouched, and walked out. Behind me, he didn't follow. For the first time, I didn't feel empty. I felt finished. The wedding date came and went without ceremony. No white dress, no vows, no carefully timed music cues. Just a normal Tuesday that felt heavier than it should have. I spent that morning returning gifts. The physical ones first. Boxes stacked in the hallway. Return labels printed. Thank you notes rewritten into something more neutral. Change of plans. Appreciate your understanding. I didn't owe anyone the full story, and I was done bleeding in public. The digital ones followed: honeymoon confirmations, registry links, calendar invites quietly deleted. By noon, my phone buzzed again. Ryan. I hadn't blocked him yet, not because I wanted to hear from him, but because part of me needed to see the pattern finish unfolding, needed to know exactly how this would end. His voicemail that day was different. Not apologetic, not angry. Indignant. You don't get to do this, he said. You don't get to rewrite everything and walk away like I meant nothing. People are asking questions. Do you have any idea how bad this makes me look? There it was again. Look. Not feel, not lose. Look. I didn't respond. An hour later, another message. I stood up for you, he said. I told people you were overwhelmed, that you panicked. I tried to protect you. Protect me. From what? The truth? By the end of the week, the story had taken on a life of its own. I heard versions of it through third parties, filtered, softened, bent into something easier to swallow. Apparently, I had cold feet. Apparently, I was emotionally unavailable. Apparently, I sabotaged a good thing because I was afraid of commitment. One mutual friend pulled me aside after work. I didn't want to say anything, she said carefully, but Ryan told us you shut down, that you wouldn't talk, that you just disappeared. I nodded. I did disappear, I said, from a role I never agreed to play. She didn't know what to do with that. Most people didn't. Because the version of the story Ryan was telling made sense to them. It fit familiar shapes. The woman who got scared, the man who was blindsided, the tragedy of miscommunication. The truth was messier. The truth didn't make him look good. The last call came 3 days after what would have been our wedding. A handwritten letter showed up in my mailbox. Ryan's handwriting was instantly recognizable, slanted, slightly uneven, like he rushed even when he tried to be careful. I didn't open it right away. I made dinner first, ate slowly, cleaned the kitchen, sat on the couch, and stared at nothing for a while. Then I opened it. He wrote that he knew I hated him, that he never meant to hurt me, that he'd been scared. He said I was the best thing that ever happened to him, that I was too good for him, that deep down he'd always been afraid I'd realize it and leave, so he told himself he was the one settling. He said he loved me. He said he'd regret this for the rest of his life. I read it twice. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Because here was the thing. I believed him. I believed he believed that version of events. But belief doesn't undo damage. Intent doesn't erase impact. And what he said, how he said it, who he said it to, the laughter that followed, revealed something real. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough of it. He might love me, but he didn't want me. Not the actual person, not the woman who was careful and steady and predictable and real. He wanted the feelings I gave him, the stability, the safety. He wanted the outcome without the desire. And I deserved more than that. The grief came later. Not for him, for the future I'd been building in my head for 4 years. The house full of kids, the routines, the quiet certainty. That future was gone now. And even though I knew, without question, that I'd made the right decision, there were nights it still hurt. So I did the thing I'd always put off. I found a therapist. In our second session, she asked me what I'd learned. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, being safe isn't the same as being valued. She wrote it down. I didn't need her to explain it. I already understood. After the letter, the noise finally stopped. No more voicemails. No more third-party lectures disguised as concern. No more unexpected names lighting up my phone like unexploded ordnance. It was almost unsettling how quickly people moved on once they realized I wasn't going to perform grief on demand. Ryan's side went quiet first. I blocked his mother after she tried one last time, this time through my own mom, apparently hoping a generational alliance might succeed where guilt had failed. My mom listened politely, then told her, in words I won't repeat verbatim, that she should focus on raising sons who don't humiliate the women they plan to marry. I've never loved her more. A few friendships didn't survive the fallout. The ones that required me to doubt myself in order to keep the peace faded naturally. Some people stopped inviting me to things. Others went out of their way to reassure me that they were neutral, as if neutrality were a moral high ground instead of a convenience. I let them go. The people who mattered stayed. My sister, my parents, 2 coworkers who brought me coffee without asking questions, and, unexpectedly, Marcus. We didn't become close overnight. There was no forced bonding, no shared trauma turned into instant intimacy, but we crossed paths a few times. At a mutual friend's barbecue, then later at a trivia night with overlapping circles. One evening, over cheap beer and bad questions, he said something that stuck. I cut Mark off, Marcus said casually, like he was mentioning a change in weather. I looked at him. Because of... Because if he thought what Ryan said was normal, Marcus replied, I couldn't trust what he might be saying about me when I wasn't around. I nodded. That makes sense, I said. It felt good, knowing the truth hadn't just freed me. Work became my anchor. There's something grounding about solving problems that behave logically. Forces go where physics says they will. Structures fail for identifiable reasons. Accountability exists. I threw myself into a new project. Long days, meticulous reviews, site visits where no one cared about my personal life, only whether the load calculations held. They did. So did I. Some nights I still felt the ache, the phantom life that almost was, the muscle memory of planning for two. But it wasn't constant anymore. It came in waves, and each wave passed faster than the last. One afternoon, my therapist asked me a question that caught me off guard. If Ryan came back tomorrow, she said, and said everything right, took responsibility, showed insight, promised change, what would you do? I didn't answer immediately. I pictured him standing in my living room again, hands open, voice careful, apologies polished by reflection. Then I imagined the earlier version of myself, the one who would have leaned in, who would have softened, who would have tried to make it work. I shook my head. I'd believe he was sincere, I said slowly, and I'd still say no. Why? Because wanting me only after losing me isn't the same as wanting me, I replied. She smiled. That answer felt like progress. On the anniversary of what would have been our wedding, 1 month later, I did something small and deliberate. I took the day off, not to mourn, to reclaim it. I went for a long walk. I bought myself lunch at a place Ryan always said was too boring. I sat by the window and watched people move through their lives without noticing mine. It felt peaceful. That night, I went home, poured a glass of wine, and opened the drawer where I'd put Ryan's letter. I read it one last time. Then I folded it carefully, slid it into the recycling bin, and took the trash out. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was release. I wasn't his mistake anymore. I wasn't his lesson. I was just me. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like more than enough. The last thing to go wasn't the ring. That had been easy. I'd slipped it off the morning after everything ended, set it on the bathroom counter, and stared at it for a long moment before dropping it into a drawer. Not in anger, not ceremonially, just finished. No, the last thing to go was the version of myself who kept trying to translate disrespect into something workable. That took longer. 3 weeks after the cancellation, my life looked almost normal from the outside. I went to work, I paid my bills, I met deadlines. People stopped asking how I was doing and started assuming I was fine, which was mostly true, at least on the surface. But clarity has a way of deepening after the noise fades. One night I sat alone in my living room, the same one where Ryan had once stood, beer in hand, laughing about how comfortable I was, and replayed the moment in my head. Not the confrontation, the laughter. That was the part that mattered. Because people don't laugh at things they don't recognize as true. They laugh when something lands. And what landed that night wasn't just Ryan's words. It was the role everyone around him had quietly accepted for me. The safe woman, the reliable woman, the woman you marry when you're done wanting more. I realized then that if I'd stayed, that role would have followed me everywhere. Into our marriage, into every argument, into every moment he wondered if life was supposed to feel louder. I would have been the answer to his fears, not the object of his desire. Life kept going. Work projects wrapped. New ones began. I spent weekends doing things I'd postponed. Small trips, long walks, quiet dinners with people who didn't need me to explain myself. Sometimes late at night, the grief still showed up. Not for Ryan, for the future I'd planned so carefully. The one I thought I was building toward. The one that disappeared the moment I realized I was building it alone. But grief didn't mean regret. It meant honesty. Here's what I know now. Being safe is not the same as being chosen. Being reliable is not the same as being desired. And being good on paper is meaningless if someone reads you like a compromise. I am not furniture. I am not a backup plan. I am not a consolation prize. I am a woman who designs bridges, who shows up, who listens, who builds things meant to last. Somewhere out there, that won't be something a man settles for. It will be exactly what he wants. Until then, I'll keep living my steady, predictable, quietly powerful life. Turns out it suits me just fine.